I wonder, what should we different and complicated individuals do to fit into society? Those whose emotions are like a tsunami, both positive and negative. I step into everyone's shoes, consider their point of view, but I am rarely understood. Music and art in general give me freedom, but I miss the human. Deep. I am so tired of mercantile, practically oriented individuals. I remember in childhood people seemed to give more importance to relationships. They were not afraid that they would be hurt, because this is part of life experience. And now, educated and extremely empty relationships. I'm one of those mothers who does not lie to my children that life is only calm and problem-free, but it hurts me that the world around them teaches them to live so calmly that it is even impersonal. The modern attitude in my case would be that I have a childhood trauma. Yes, I do. My trauma is that I lived my young years in times where there was complete freedom. I lived in a broken family and learned to survive, and this makes you very resilient and mobile, of course, if you don't succumb to this trauma. My question is, why is every second emotion now a childhood trauma? Isn't it possible that it's just a momentary emotional state? Why is every second child who is more mobile hyperactive, and immediately the parents cut off his potential by trying to do it gently so that he fits into school and kindergarten? Then we complain that there is no true love, but it requires depth, not discipline in its final phase. Whether it's a man or a woman, isn't love the best thing that can happen to a person?
Wow, that's a lot, right? And so incredibly powerful. I think so many of us can feel that. It really gets you thinking. So in this explainer, we're going to dive into exactly that. We'll explore what it really means to feel everything so intensely, and maybe, just maybe, figure out how we can navigate a world that, well, a world that often seems to prize being calm over being connected.
You know, that feeling of being different and complicated, that's not just a poetic phrase. For so many people, it is their day-to-day reality. It's this search for your place in a society that doesn't always seem to get you. From a psychological perspective, this really speaks to the experience of being a highly sensitive person, someone who just processes the world in high def, you know? You feel life in its full, vibrant, and sometimes overwhelming spectrum of color. And that metaphor, a tsunami. I mean, let's just sit with that for a second. It's so perfect, isn't it? A tsunami isn't good or bad. It's just this incredible force of nature. It's powerful, it can be overwhelming, and it absolutely reshapes the landscape. And that's exactly what a deep inner emotional world feels like. The highs are just soaring, and the lows, they can feel just as deep, just as profound. And the key thing to remember here is this isn't a bug, it's a feature. It's not a flaw. It's just a fundamental part of who you are. Okay, so this power, this tsunami of feeling, it leads to something that can be really, really tough. We could call it the empathy paradox. It's this strange and often painful gap, right? You have this huge capacity to feel for other people, to really get where they're coming from, but at the same time, you're constantly feeling like no one really sees or understands you in return. And this quote just hits the nail on the head, doesn't it? It's not about a simple miscommunication here and there. No, it's exhausting. It's this constant lonely work of putting all this emotional energy out into the world, only to realize that the connection, it's a one-way street. It can really make you start to wonder, am I just too much for people? So you end up living in these two different worlds of connection, right? On the one hand, you've got this ideal, this deep yearning for relationships where it's okay to be open, where being vulnerable is just part of life. And on the other hand, you've got the reality of today, a world that seems to be all about practical, calm, and, let's be honest, kind of empty interactions. And that clash, that's where that deep feeling of isolation comes from.
Okay, so where does society tell us all this intense feeling comes from? Well, lately, it feels like there's one go-to answer for everything: trauma. But what if that's not the full picture? What if we're missing something really important? Let's take a step back and really question this rush to pathologize every single feeling we have.
And this really is the heart of the matter, isn't it? It's such a crucial question. In our search for understanding ourselves, have we maybe gone a little too far? Have we started to slap a diagnosis on our own humanity? Because when we label every single powerful emotion as a symptom of some old wound, we're basically telling ourselves that our feelings right now aren't valid. So yeah, is there another way to think about this? Yes, absolutely there is. And it's this idea right here, the momentary emotional state. And from a professional standpoint, this is so important. It's this simple but revolutionary idea that feeling sad or angry or even wildly joyful,
can just be a pure, healthy, normal reaction to what's happening in your life right now. It lets us see our emotions for what they are, a living, breathing response to the world, not just some ghost haunting us from the past.
So why does this even matter? Why is this distinction so critical? Well, think about it. Our society is pretty much built for comfort, efficiency, and keeping things under control. And deep, messy, complicated emotions, they don't really fit into that neat little box. They can be seen as inconvenient, disruptive. And because of that, there's this constant pressure, sometimes subtle, sometimes not, to just be calm, to be impersonal, to just fit in.
And this whole process, it starts so young. You see a kid who's just full of life, full of vitality and curiosity. And what happens? That energy gets labeled a problem. It's hyperactive. And so in this well-meaning but misguided effort to help them fit in at school, their potential gets gently snipped. They're taught to be calmer, to be less themselves, and they learn a really damaging lesson, that a core part of who they are is wrong.
Okay, so that's the landscape. That's the world we're often dealing with. The big question is, what do you do about it? How do you not just get by, but actually thrive? How do you stay true to yourself without cutting yourself off from everyone? Well, the secret isn't changing who you are. It's about getting smart. It's about developing strategies to protect your energy and carve out your own space in the world.
So let's talk about building your personal toolkit for self-preservation. First off, find your people, find your communities. Look for places where depth is actually celebrated. Think art scenes, music venues, philosophy groups. Second, and this is a big one, you have to give yourself permission to take a step back from people who drain you. That's not being rude, it's self-preservation. Third, really start to practice that skill of figuring out, is this emotion about what's happening right now, or is it an echo from the past? And finally, if you have kids, be an example for them. Show them that all emotions are valuable.
I really want to land this point, so let's be crystal clear. Having the capacity to feel things this deeply is not a liability. It's not a weakness. It is the absolute prerequisite for everything that makes life meaningful. Yeah, it can be totally exhausting trying to navigate a world that seems to love the shallow end of the pool. But your depth, that is the exact thing that makes true, profound connection even possible.
And this quote just says it all really. True love, it requires depth, not discipline. Think about that. Real, lasting love isn't built on being perfectly calm or controlling your every impulse. It's built on having the guts to go deep, to explore all of life and all of emotion with another person. It requires the exact kind of intensity we've been talking about.
Which brings us to the end. That ability you have to feel a tsunami of emotion, it isn't separate from your ability to love. They are one and the same. It's what allows you to experience what is quite possibly the most meaningful part of being human. Your depth isn't a problem that needs to be fixed. It is, and always has been, your greatest gift. The only real question left is, how are you going to honor it?